you've ever climbed inside a giant 5,000-ton artillery turret, pulled levers, forced the hydraulics, and tried to hit a target miles away using just coordinates, you know that Iron Nest Heavy Turret Simulator does not forgive amateur mistakes. This dieselpunk simulator puts you in command of a colossal war machine in an alternative late 1920s Spain on the brink of civil war, and every single shot fired has real consequences on the battlefield. That's why today, I'm bringing you 10 advanced tips you need to know to stop struggling with the machine and start truly dominating the battlefield. I'm Matthew, and let's get right into the video. This is one of those tips I consider mandatory, because the game does not forgive rush decisions. Before placing the projectile into the breach, I always double-check the target distance, the required elevation, and the number of powder charges indicated by the ballistic calculation. The loading sequence involves selecting and ramming the projectile, dispensing the charges, and then pushing everything into the gun. And after that, there is no magic button to undo the process. The biggest danger is calculating the trajectory correctly, but messing up right at the moment of loading. Perhaps you changed the target, realized the distance was different, or simply typed the wrong value into the ballistic calculator. If the projectile has already been rammed, the only way to remove it is by firing, and the dispensed powder charges cannot be returned to the loader either. Therefore, turn the check into a ritual. Read the coordinates, make the measurement on the map, confirm the ammo type, check the elevation, and only then select the projectile. Afterwards, check the number of charges one more time before pulling the lever that finalizes the loading. It sounds like exaggerated care, but in Iron Nest, 1 second of attention saves an entire lost mission. You stop treating loading as a simple animation and start seeing it as a one-way tactical decision. Once the ammunition enters the breach, the shot is practically committed. So, operator, calculate calmly, confirm everything, and only ram the projectile when you are sure it is ready to fulfill the mission. This is one of the tips that most changes the way you play. I like it because it transforms the dual cannon from a simple firepower advantage into a tool of rhythm and survival. You fire with one barrel, rotate the turret immediately, and leave the second one ready to respond to another target before counter battery fire has time to punish your position. This is especially important because enemy fire can begin as soon as the first projectile hits the target. The smartest move is not to load both barrels with the same ammunition by default. Leaving one AP prepared for bunkers, underground positions, or fire direction centers, while the other receives HCHE for target groupings or less protected positions, allows you to react without interrupting the entire reload cycle. AP is focused on penetration, while HCHE works better against group targets and differently fortified areas. I would use this technique primarily when I had already pre-calculated both targets and their firing solutions. Thus, the first cannon fires, you start rotating the turret, check the azimuth and elevation of the second, and fire without standing still, reorganizing ammo or redoing calculations under pressure. It's almost like preparing an editing sequence before recording. The more decisions you make in advance, less time you waste at the critical moment. I would just be careful not to turn haste into waste. Before firing, confirm whether the ammo type really matches the target, because HCHE does not replace AP against underground or armored positions, and also observe the flight time of the projectiles. An impact can alter the state of the counter battery before the second shot arrives. Overall, I consider this an excellent advanced tactic. It rewards planning, knowledge of projectiles, and mastery of turret rotation, exactly the kind of detail that separates a merely efficient operator from someone who truly controls the battlefield. If there's one thing I learned playing Iron Nest that completely changed my combat flow, it's understanding that perfectionism is sometimes the enemy of efficiency. Many operators become obsessed with aligning the center of the crosshairs with the chest of each individual enemy, wasting precious seconds of hydraulics and recalibration. The truth is that when you are dealing with heavy projectiles in the simulator, the logic shifts from precision shot to area domination. If you notice that multiple targets are grouped in the same corridor or row, stop trying to make a surgical shot on each of them. The secret lies in abusing the massive destruction radius these munitions offer, especially HCHE, high capacity, high explosive. Unlike standard HE, which requires a bit more care, HCHE has an area of effect so generous that the central impact doesn't even need to be exact. What matters is that the explosion covers the space where the group is concentrated. This means you can aim a little further ahead or between the targets, knowing that the shockwave will do the dirty work of clearing the entire row without you needing to frantically readjust the turret. In practice, this transforms your gameplay from slow, calculated chess into a much more aggressive and fluid rhythm. Instead of spending time turning cranks to align the next individual target, you fire, watch the explosions sweep 3 or 4 enemies at once, and immediately move on to calculate the next fire solution. This not only saves time, but keeps constant pressure on the battlefield, preventing the enemy team from reorganizing or advancing while you're busy aiming detail by detail. So, the next time you see a cluster of targets in the same corridor, trust the raw power of HCHEA and relax on millimetric precision. Use the explosion as your main area clearing tool and focus on keeping the firing rate high. At the end of the day, no one will question if the center of the explosion hit the target perfectly if there's no one left standing at the end of the row. It's about efficiency. It's about being the heavy artillery the battlefield needs, and not just another shooter trying to hit the bullseye. One of the biggest traps I see operators falling into is treating all ammunition as if it had the same function, merely swapping firepower. The truth is that each type of projectile was designed for a specific tactical situation, and understanding this is what separates an average shooter from a true artillery master. When you master the specialization of each ammunition, you stop wasting resources and start solving problems much more smartly. AP ammunition, for example, is your surgical tool for extreme situations. It was made to pierce underground bunkers and heavily armored targets, where a normal explosion would just scratch the surface. Furthermore, it is the mandatory choice when you have allies operating very close to the target, as it generates almost no fragmentation. Using AP in these moments is not just about effectiveness, it's about operational safety and avoiding ending up compromising your own team with collateral explosion. Meanwhile, HE is your workhorse, the general-purpose ammunition you will use in most surface target encounters. It offers a solid balance between damage and area of effect, perfect for demolishing exposed structures and medium groups of enemies. It's the ammunition you load when you don't know exactly what you'll find, but need something reliable that works well in most scenarios without requiring complex penetration calculations. Finally, HCHEA is your answer for when the battlefield fills with infantry spread out or gathered in clusters. It has the largest area of effect in the game, ideal for sweeping large distances and catching multiple targets at once. The common mistake is using HCHEA on hardened targets or bunkers, where it loses efficiency. Save this ammunition for when you need to clear terrain quickly and turn infantry waves into smoking craters. Knowing how to alternate between these 3 options in the heat of combat is what will make your turret truly dominate the field. Many novice operators treat the red and yellow pencils as if they were the same thing. I did this a lot myself, just with different colors, and that proves costly when calculating the firing solution. The difference between them is not aesthetic, it's functional, and knowing when to use each will save you time, prevent typing errors, and keep your clipboard clean for the data that really matters. The red pencil is your official working tool, the one you use when you are already sure of the target and need to execute the shot. It draws the measurement line and automatically copies the azimuth and distance directly to your clipboard. This means you don't need to write anything down manually or risk getting a number wrong in a rush. It's perfect for when you've already triangulated the position and are ready to send the firing data to the turret, ensuring that what you measured is exactly what will be fired. On the other hand, the yellow pencil is your scratch pad, the tool you use during the thinking and triangulation process without compromising your current data. It measures distance and angle, but doesn't copy anything to the clipboard, which is ideal when you're testing different intersection points or trying to understand the terrain. Using yellow for sketching intersections and reference lines prevents you from polluting your clipboard with incomplete or intermediate information, keeping the focus on the final target. So, the next time you're on the map, stop using the wrong pencil for the wrong step. Use yellow to explore, test, and free triangulate without worrying about copying data. When you're sure of the target, switch to red and let it capture the bearing and range automatically for you. This small mindset shift will make your workflow much cleaner, faster, and more professional, transforming you into an operator who not only shoots well but thinks like true artillery. Triangulation with multiple observers is one of the most satisfying techniques because it transforms seemingly abstract information into a very clear visual solution. First, place the blue markers on the map at the exact coordinates of the spotters indicated by the teletype. It sounds simple, but messing up a grid square here compromises all subsequent calculations. With observers positioned, select the yellow tool and draw a line starting from spotter 1, adjusting it until it reaches the reported azimuth. You don't need to figure out the distance manually. Since you don't yet know where the target is, extend the line to the other side of the map. Then, repeat the process with the second spotter and its respective bearing. The important moment is where the two lines cross. This point represents the location of the hidden target, and it is precisely there that the technique starts to feel less like a puzzle and more like a real artillery operation. I like this system because it rewards attention and precision, not just reflexes. You are building the solution with incomplete information, like a commander trying to see the battlefield through fragmented reports. When you find the intersection, mark the spot with the red target token, and only then draw a line from your turret to this point to discover the bearing and range of the shot. Before pulling the trigger, double-check if both spotters are at the correct coordinates and if you use the right angles. A tiny difference can send a ton of explosives to the wrong place. Using star shells is one of my favorite ways to correct a shot in the dark. When the flare appears, the game reveals two small yellow arrows pointing in different directions, accompanied by the missed distance. Instead of treating this as a simple visual indication, think of the flash as the new reference point to find the true position of the target. The secret is to observe the exact center of the illuminating explosion and identify the direction indicated by the space between the two arrows. Then, grab the map pencil and draw a line starting from that center, following that direction for the number of units shown below the flare. This process tells you where the target actually is relative to the point where your shot landed, rather than relative to the original calculated position. I recommend making this correction calmly, because it's very easy to look at just one of the arrows and end up following the wrong direction. The arrows diverge precisely to indicate an axis, so the correct path lies right between them. It's a small reading difference, but considering the size of the map and the distance traveled by the projectiles, a few degrees of error can leave the next shot far from the objective. The most interesting part is that this mechanic turns a seemingly lost shot into a new source of information. You fire the flare, analyze the impact, use the pencil to project the indicated distance, and find a much more reliable position for the next shot. For me, this is the moment when Iron Nest stops being just a button-pressing game and starts feeling like a true artillery operation, where every error helps build the correct solution. The reconnaissance plane reveals the map in an excellent way, but each use consumes requisition points that are also needed to purchase ammunition, powder charges, and other fundamental resources. I would only call for a flight when truly stuck, especially facing a priority target whose position could completely change the outcome of the mission. If you can still estimate the sector using observers, coordinates, markings, or even a star projectile, it might be better to save the points and keep working with the available information. I also think it's essential to think about the plane's flight path, and not just the point you want to reveal. Sending it over an area protected by anti-air defenses turns an expensive tool into a potential waste. Before authorizing the flight, I would evaluate whether the obtained information is worth the risk of losing resources that could guarantee several important shots. In practice, I would treat the plane as an emergency resource, not as an automatic part of every operation. If the fog of war is hiding precisely the target that needs to be confirmed, use it without guilt. Otherwise, prefer to save requisition credits for advanced ammunition and charges, because a perfect reconnaissance isn't of much use if you later lack material to destroy the target. Instead of treating smoke merely as a curtain to block enemy vision, you can use it as an indirect command tool. The point of impact guides Allied forces to reposition, moving them away from the area you intend to bombard. This is confirmed by game community discussions, in which players explain that friendly units move toward the center of the smoke. In practice, I would use this technique before preparing an HE shot or another high-impact bombardment. First, I would fire smoke near the Allies, but not necessarily on the enemy target, and observe their movement. Once the infantry was out of the danger zone, then I would carry out the bombardment. It is a much safer way to create a separation line between your troops and the enemy, reducing the risk of turning an efficient attack into a friendly fire tragedy. The most important detail is to think of smoke as a movement order, not as protection for the artillery itself. If you simply launch SMK at the enemy position expecting it to hide the battlefield, you may end up not getting the desired repositioning from your allies. The ideal is to choose a point that is attractive to the infantry, but that also leads them away from the area marked for bombardment. Recent game guides describe precisely this use of smoke to move friendly units away before hitting dangerous positions. Personally, I consider this one of the best tips for those who already master the basics of Iron Nest, because it rewards planning and battlefield reading. The player stops being just someone calculating trajectories and starts acting as a commander coordinating movements. Smoke to displace, time to confirm withdrawal, and only then, explosives to destroy. In more chaotic missions or in challenge mode, this habit can be the difference between a perfect bombardment and a sequence of casualties caused by your own artillery. FDCs need to be treated as strategic resources, not as ordinary targets. In challenge mode, destroying one of these centers temporarily interrupts counter-battery fire, working almost like a pause button amid the chaos. However, there are only 3 per mission, so spending all of them right at the beginning can leave you with 0 safety margin when the situation really heats up. I usually wait until I gather multiple pieces of information before attacking an FDC. While enemy fire is suspended, take the opportunity to replot targets on the map, check bearings, calculate new firing solutions, and resupply ammunition and powder charges. The pause is worth much more when you use that time to prepare an entire sequence of shots, instead of simply breathing for a few seconds. A good strategy is to eliminate as many targets as possible before destroying the next FDC. Try to group missions with similar bearings, because this reduces time spent turning the turret and lets you make the most of each safety window. Also keep an eye on projectile flight time. If you destroy the FDC before another shot reaches the target, the counter-battery countdown can resume as soon as that second impact happens. For me, the most dangerous mistake is seeing the FDC as an automatic priority. It is important, but it also represents one of the few opportunities to regain control of the operation. I would save at least one for the middle of the mission. When bearings start changing, targets become harder to calculate, and counter-battery pressure turns every second into a critical decision.